angry, but also sending a dick pic. I can't quite get my head around that.
Well, yeah, like, so last night I got one from this guy being like, you know, you're not funny, right? And then he was like, you should, and then he just sent a picture of his completely naked of him with his penis, being like, this is what you should be doing.
Hi everyone. Before we start, I want to take a minute to talk about my next book. You may have heard about the story of GameStop in January or February and thought it was all over. You're sadly mistaken. Unfolding online has been a clash between the corrupt practices of Wall Street and the hive mind of the internet. It's a hot, raging information war pitting retail investors against financial giants swimming in corruption and fraud. The trailer is at the end of this podcast, but if you want to help crowdfund the book or just find out more, you can sign up to my mailing list to get access to a preview of chapter 1 or go to whenmoon.com to read more about the book. The first 200 people to pre-order the book will get a free pack of To the Moon crayons with their book. I just want to make a quick mention of our sponsors. Namecheap are one of the cheapest places on the internet to get a domain name for your next website. I've used Namecheap for all the sites I've ever purchased and have found it really easy to use. Spreaker are a rapidly growing platform for podcast recording, publishing, and monetization, with pricing plans as low as $7 per month. A cheap way to host your podcast and start earning from your back catalogue of shows. Finally, ExpressVPN is the internet's most trusted VPN. Protect your privacy and watch and view content that is location locked. You could even try watching Netflix from a different country. And right now, they're offering 35% off 12 months of ExpressVPN. Please use the links in the description below if you want to support the show. Anyway, here's the podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Chatter. Today I am here with Rosie Holt, comedian and actor. Welcome to the show, Rosie.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Like I said, I was sad to not be able to get you while I was in London, but maybe another time. So what is your first memory of comedy?
Well, so my dad was a real comedy lover, and he had this old VHS tape which had an assortment of things on it, and it had Will-O the Wisp. Did you ever watch Will-O the Wisp? Which was this cartoon, but it was voiced by Kenneth Williams, and it was amazing. If you've never seen it, you have to check it out. It's really funny and really kind of quirky.
Okay.
So it had some episodes of that on it, and then it also had Not the 9 O'Clock News, and then it also had Rick Mayall's character Kevin Turvey. So it was like but it was, you know, back in the day when the tapes you had, you just watch again and again and again. So it was a tape just of random comedy he'd sort of taped on TV. But I was thinking that's probably kind of the earliest memory I have of comedy. It was just this great assortment of old TV things. And then, you know, I think the tape died after a couple of years, as they do.
Yeah. It's so weird to think that we used to just like watch the same things over and over. We didn't have like a billion possible things to watch on Netflix. Not that some of us don't just watch the same thing over and over regardless, but...
Well, sometimes you do as well, because you look at Netflix and you look at all the choice and you go, I can't cope with this. It's too much. I need to just go with what I know. I can't be dealing with all these newfangled things that people are telling me to watch.
Yeah. I don't know how people have the time. It's pretty crazy.
No. I mean, I don't know. I find time to watch a lot of TV, however busy I am. So I think if you're dedicated to watching a lot of rubbish on TV, you can always find a moment.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think the video has stopped sending, but it is still recording. I'll cut this a little bit out just so you know. So I think it'll come back in a minute. There's just it jumps up and down due to internet and quality issues. But so who is the first female comedian that you remember seeing?
probably Victoria Wood or Miss Caroline Aherne doing Mrs. Merton. I think it's quite telling that as a kid, I can't really think of any. I mean, there was them and there was French and Saunders, but the idea of women doing comedy was really just not a thing when I was growing up. So it was only really kind of in my late 20s that I even kind of thought, oh wait, women can do this.
Who's the first one you remember that you saw on stage along at the same time as maybe you were starting this out? And aside from the two you've mentioned there, who are the ones that you saw as your first peers as such?
I'm not sure. I've suddenly, so I used to live with Harriet Kemsley, who is, I don't know if people are aware, is very good stand-up. And that was before I started doing stand-up. And so she was really kind of my entry in stand-up, because I used to go and support her and go to a lot of her gigs. And she's someone who's gone on to do really well. So when I was going to see her, I was like, oh, okay, there's some really good female comedians out there. I've just suddenly had a kind of a mind blank, which always happens when I'm like, must remember these names. But I mean, it's good. There's some really good people out now. You're going to have to catch, can't even speak, cut me out.
It's all right.
Umming and ahhing. That's it.
And
Andrea Hubert.
Okay.
Who I think is great. She was sort of when I started doing stand up, and I remember seeing her early on, and I thought she was so brilliant because she's someone who's really she's not afraid to go to really dark places, and I think that's sometimes harder for women because we get a lot more judgment piled onto us, and it's a lot easier to be a kind of Frankie Boyle type if you're a man, because people are a bit more forgiving, where if women say stuff which are really dark or really bad, people tend to kind of see it as a kind of personal failing of them. I don't know. That's kind of the impression I got. But I remember thinking she was great.
But do you think that element of surprise, say you're a woman, you're doing some comedy, and you want to take it to that really dark place, do you think that maybe you look, if you're a woman on stage, you look like a little bit more sort of sweet or innocent in a way than a guy would, and then it takes the audience by surprise, so it kind of gives you more stealth in what's coming in the material?
You can definitely play with that, certainly. It's always a funny one, because also when you go on stage as a woman, I think the audience expects something of you. They expect that they're usually, I think what's hard about being a female comic is there's an element of goodwill. If you're a new comic and you're a male comic and the audience aren't aware of you, when you go on stage, the audience are already set up for you to be funny. They're like, yeah, okay, we're in a safe pair of hands. This guy's going to be great. As a woman comic, I find you don't have that element of goodwill when you come on stage. People are already a bit tense. They're like, oh, it's a woman. Is she going to joke about her periods? What's going on? So you usually have to work a bit harder, I think, at the beginning to convince people you're funny. And then when you're there, you're fine. I think once the audience relax and they go, okay, we're in the presence of someone who's going to make us laugh, they're fine. But I think they are more tense when a woman comes on stage. They're more prepared for them not to be funny. That's what I think.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think it's more when it's an unknown comedian and they kind of walk on stage that there's that moment. It's like, oh, what's this going to be like? That kind of just, I don't know, permeates the audience. Have you altered your sets to deal with that? Is it something you realize and then you kind of altered the way you lay your material? Do you go with something big as an icebreaker or something really shocking, or I don't know, do you have a way of dealing with that?
Well, I've stopped. I kind of haven't done stand up for a while, but when I was doing it pre-pandemic, I'd usually address the fact that I was a woman. I'd just be like, "Hello, I'm a woman." I can't remember what I'd say, but I'd sort of address that. I think if you address the kind of uncomfortableness in the room straight away, people, and I think every comic does it. Like wherever you are, you address the first thing people are thinking about. So it's annoying because you often have to sort of say, make some joke about your appearance or what the audience are thinking. But it does work as an icebreaker, and I think comics do that about all sorts of things, about their race or their religion or whatever they're aware that the audience are instantly going to be thinking of when they come on stage.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the skill, really, isn't it? So when was the first time you kind of realized that comedy in some form, one or another, that you wanted to do that as something, even just like the first time you went, I could do that, like I could get on stage and tell some jokes?
Well, I trained as an actor, and I'd always been good at making people laugh, but I hadn't ever considered it as something. Again, I just thought it seemed to me a very sort of male-dominated medium. And then after I left drama school, a couple of years after that, I wrote like a small comedy piece, more because I was just, I think I'd had a very humiliating one night stand, and I decided to write a little sketch about it, and I filmed it with some friends, and I put it on the internet, and a lot of people found it very funny, and lots of sort of people in the industry kind of really liked it, and it made me think, okay, I can do this. So then I wrote something more and ended up winning So You Think You Write Funny, the little known comedy sister of So You Think You're Funny. And from then I thought, oh God, maybe I could try stand up. And initially I did stand up with a ukulele as a kind of prop. And, comedians are very rude about ukulele playing comedians. But it was a good way of starting. And then I sort of shed the ukulele and just went straight to stand up. So quite late, really, in my sort of late 20s, something like that.
Well, I mean, comedy's not always something people come to young. Because it's John Bishop only did it, like, I think after he got divorced. The guy from, he's a Scouser, and I remember he was just like talking about how he was complaining to his mates or something, and he just ended up trying comedy, like after he got divorced, as like a way to have some onstage therapy.
Yeah, I think a lot of comedians use it as therapy.
It's got to be a fun way to like talk through your problems. I don't know.
I think it can be quite
it's not that
cathartic.
helpful if you're all laughing.
That's the thing. When you're starting out and you're on the open mic circuit, you do see some people who literally are just going on to talk about their problems, and they're not funny, and sometimes it's quite sad and distressing. But it's people who just like going, I just want to share my pain with you all, and I'll stick a punchline on the end of it. I think there's an element of that.
Yeah, there's definitely, it's got to be. I often wonder whenever I'm watching comedy, especially, is when people are telling stories, it's like how much of this is actually like the complete truth, and how much of this is like kind of what happened, but just what you've exaggerated. Like, where's the line? Because I can never quite tell. Do you know what I mean? When because it's a real comedy trope when people stand up and say, "All right, well, this really happened," but in my head, I'm like, "What are you exaggerating here?"
Yeah.
Or what's worse, and you don't want to tell us? Like, is this the tame version of the story? Like, so how did your first time on stage go? Where was that?
Do you mean my first time doing stand-up? I mean, that was comically bad. It was so funny. I'd met this lovely comic on when I sort of written and performed something that wasn't stand up, and he said, I think you're really funny. I think you'd be really good at stand up. And I was like, no, I don't think so. And he said, well, look, I'm running this small night. Why don't you come along and do something? And I thought, okay, well, why not? So I got there, and it was in some really dodgy end of London. And I got there, and it was above a pub, and he was looking very sort of tense. And I said, oh, hi, I'm here. And he said, okay, we're just sort of waiting a bit more because see if, at the moment there's not many audience. So I went upstairs and stood, and they ended up, because they couldn't find any audience, they ended up going onto the street and looking for audience members. So they ended up bringing in people into the audience who were incredibly drunk and confused. So you had this comedy audience who were full of drunk and confused people. And I was on last, and I watched everyone before me get completely annihilated by this audience. So there was this really drunk guy who was in the audience, and he was like, yeah, shit. And then this one guy was doing his routine, and then he was getting sort of booed, and so he said, okay, don't like that. Well, what about this? And he whipped out this saucepan and he put it on his head, and he was like, do you like this? Do you think this is funny? And everyone was like, yo, crap, get off the stage. It was literally that bad. And then Harriet Kemsley, who I was living with at the time, had sort of said to one of the comics there, she said, look, my friend Rosie's doing stand-up for the first time. Can you look out for her? So her friend who I was sat with, he went on, and he actually did okay compared to everyone else. But he was so angry at the audience being horrible that he said he left his set going, fuck you all, I don't need this. I've got a gig at the Comedy Store later. So he got off stage and he said to me, he said, Rosie, I know I told Harriet that I'd look after you, but this is the worst audience I've ever experienced in my life. And he left. And before it got to me, the audience started going, no more comedy, no more comedy. And the MC got on stage and he went, no, wait, there's one more. And the chief heckler got up and was like, where is he? And he went, no, it's a she. And so then I got up and I was like, hello. So I got up on stage, and I was lucky because the chief heckler passed out throughout the whole of my set. So I didn't get any laughs, but I didn't get any heckling. I just got stone cold silence, which compared to everybody else was actually better than I was expecting. So I needed to silence, and then at the end of the set, the chief heckler woke up and he went, "You're brilliant!" like that. And that was my first comedy gig. And I thought, right, I'm not sure if I want to do this again. So it was a while till my second.
Yeah, I mean, fair play for trying again after that. I get the feeling it could have gone worse, perhaps, but I mean, yeah, that's quite a baptism to have had. I assume you still use that guy's review of your set on like posters and that sort of thing. Of
course, yeah. Drunk man pulled out from the street says, yeah.
So when did you actually start to get, I don't know, comfortable with standing on stage and telling jokes? Because it's almost, I think it's perhaps the most terrifying thing to get on stage and do, because anyone can get on stage and talk or like repeat a script, and they're able to hide behind the script in a way because they didn't write it, or they're able to just sort of talk, and people will sit there and half listen, and if they're not expecting anything. If say you go to, like, I don't know, I was going to give a talk on something, you'd expect people to be sat there, most of them, or a good portion, like not really listening. Or whereas when you're going up on stage to do comedy, you're kind of up there, and the focus is really quite on you in a way that it's not, say, at like an open mic maybe for a musician, where you're just sort of in the background. When do you stop being like, holy shit, I'm up here to try and make these people laugh and they're all staring at me and I've just got this microphone and, oh dear God, please don't rush the stage.
Well, I find it always really scary. I mean, I think the good thing about I've noticed this with other stand-ups who have training in acting, is I think they are, at the beginning, they're better at feigning confidence. So when you're looking at new stand-ups, people who have done drama usually look more confident, even if they aren't. Whereas new stand-ups who don't have that are kind of more unconfident. I mean, I find that it actually depends on the gig, because you can get on, to begin with, I'm always pretty nervous, but when you get on stage, if an audience starts really responding and really enjoying it, then I very quickly relax on stage and start enjoying what I'm doing. If you get on stage and you make a joke and usually, you start with a strong opener because you want to win the audience round. If no one responds to that well, then instantly you're back slightly up. And it's a bit of a catch-22, because if you're not confident on stage, then you can't do as good a job, and you're not as funny. So it's these things that you've got to try and fake it till you make it, really.
Yeah, I mean, I have the utmost respect for all comedians who are able to stand up and sort of, I don't know, command a crowd in a way. I was watching a set of yours from, I can't remember where it was, somewhere in London. I will put the link in the description below. I'll be able to find it for people. And you were talking about, I think it was a couple of years ago, and you talked about that you'd been dating a journalist who was writing a book about Brexit, and said he kind of split up with you in order to, And I was just I was laughing so hard. I was like, I bet my ex-girlfriend wished I'd done that, because I literally I think probably drove her insane whilst writing a book about Brexit. I was laughing so hard.
Oh God. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, because it was hard to see the when I was dating him, he was writing this book about Brexit, and he Brexited me, basically. It's hard not to see the parallels.
So what do you think is the purpose of comedy, in society? What role does comedy have for the country or civilization?
Oh, what a question. Well, obviously it's to entertain, but I think also it's what it's always been, without being too wanky about it, is to have, back in the time you had a court jester who would say the unsayable, who would say the things that no one else could really get away with saying. And I think the best comedy is stuff that, because it's a release. I mean, I know some people get cross with me online because they say I shouldn't joke about the things I joke about, but I kind of think that it's a release for people. I find personally as a person that, when something really bad has happened to me, I've always sort of looked for the comedy in it, just as a way really of comforting myself. And it's a release for people. And also, if you're not sure, if issues do seem kind of big and scary and complicated, somehow it's just funny to laugh at them. That wasn't very eloquent, I'm sorry, but I think for example, if I think of some comics I like who are actually quite right wing, and I'm a left wing person, but I like the good. If you're a good right wing comic, and admittedly there's quite a small pool of that, but if they're good, then sometimes I like watching that, because I like laughing. I like laughing at myself, and I like looking at the world differently, and I think you can do that through a good joke.
Yeah, you got. I think, I'm in the same boat. I mean, there's some right wing comedians that just crack me up. Who do you enjoy listening to?
So
from that area, 'cause I'm always interested.
Yeah, so I think Leo Curse is very funny. He's provocative on Twitter and online, but I've seen him on stage, and he's very funny. And I think Jeff Norcott, who is not as right wing as Leo, who's more sort of centrist right, is brilliant and funny, and also very informed actually. So he's sort of, his opinion's always kind of worth listening to. So I think those are the two that on the right that I'd pick out. And then you've also got people
that. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, well, I was just going to say I also think there's comics like who aren't politically on the right, but who are very good provocateurs, like Finn Taylor and Alfie Brown, who are great because they do make you, they do say things which are sort of quite awful, but it makes you think about something different. I took my brother to see Finn Taylor, and he said afterwards, he went, "That was great. I didn't agree with half of what he was saying, but it made me laugh so much." And I think, I think that's what's great. It's exciting.
Really is. I love that like, I love when you're in that moment where the comedian is kind of saying the things that, like you said, no one else sort of will say, but when the audience is kind of brought along in the laugh train, it's like, I think Louis C.K. said it in one of his specials. He's like, "You're all here with me. You laughed at all of this stuff." It's it's like a shared moment where everyone can kind of forget about being too serious about things and sort of all laugh at the ridiculousness of our world together.
Yeah. Oh, Louis C.K.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It's really difficult because I find that there's this thing where with some people, I want to separate the person from the bad things they did. Like, as the artist, I want to still like enjoy their art and kind of like be like, yes, this was a horrible human being, obviously fucked up in many ways. There's like people like Michael Jackson, like, I freaking love his music, but like at the same time, you have to be aware that he was very, like,
he's a big pedophile.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and same with Kevin Spacey. And like, because I love his acting in some things, like in House of Cards, for example. But then you have to and then there's the same thing with Louis C.K. And maybe he gets away with it more because he's a comedian and he can kind of, I don't know, like throw his hands up and just be like, well, and laugh about it in a way that like more serious artists can.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Louis C.K., the jury's still out, isn't it? Whether he will kind of rise above it. I think what some people found difficult was that it's not, his comedy was often referencing the kind of stuff it turned out he was doing. So, there was a sort of complicity that as an audience member, you suddenly went, oh no, I thought I was laughing at something, just quite far-fetched, and actually you were kind of indicating all the rather troubling things you were doing. But yeah, he was very funny. I don't know what's going to happen with him career-wise.
I mean, I think he's got a new show out. Maybe. I get the feeling I heard about that. Anyway, the comedian that I am loving most at the minute actually is Tim Dillon. And I'm not normally a big fan of American comedians. I feel like they're too, like, I don't know, abrasive. There's no subtlety to it. But Tim Dillon is so funny. I found out recently he's got like one of the biggest podcasts in the world.
I'm going to have to check him out.
I think it's like, yeah, he looks like Alex Jones's illegitimate son, and he is loud and is like a former, like, he did an outrageous amount of drugs. He was like a subprime mortgage broker at one point. All the really, really, really shitty mortgages that like broke the economy in 2008. Like he was like a salesman for that, but he always jokes about how he was a really bad salesman for them. So he was like the worst of the worst bankers. But he's just this like loud, abrasive guy that is so funny, but he's like so on the money with like, I don't know, what's going on the internet. Like, I think he just like scrolls the internet like 12 hours a day looking for material, but it's so good. He got in trouble recently for suggesting that Australians are still in lockdown because they want to grill and sit in the sun. That's all they want to do. And that they all are just loving it because, like, why would they not? You know, the government is telling them to sit at home and grill, and it's like, why would the Australians revolt? You know, they're just a bunch of oh, really funny guy. I definitely recommend you check him out.
Okay, I will. I will. He sounds good.
Yeah. So what sort, like you mentioned this a little bit earlier, like what sort of challenges do you think that women have to go through in comedy that's different, say, to like what men have to deal with? Like, what are the, aside from, I know we mentioned the kind of when you walk on stage, that initial sort of, but like aside from that, is there anything else that you think women have to deal with that's different to men?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know any other male comic who gets sent dick pics, for example. And also it's, you know, the kind, I mean, obviously my comedy is mainly online. You know, I've got, I put my comedy on Twitter and I've got, you know, big following for it. So, you know, I get a lot of abuse online and, you know, a lot of it is quite misogynistic. You know, it's about your appearance and so, you know, sometimes it's nice stuff. Sometimes it's like, I don't think you're funny, but I would bang you. But then sometimes it's, you know, you're ugly and you're not good looking enough to be on Twitter. There's I don't think men get that. So I think as women, you do get a lot of stuff pointed at your appearance, which can be a bit exhausting. So I think that's something that I don't know any male comedian who deals with. But I think most female comics would be like, yeah, we've all been sent a dick pic by some angry fan. Well, not fan. Angry anti-fan.
Fan.
Yeah.
That's such a weird like thing to do, like from like a psychological perspective, to be angry but also sending a dick pic. I can't quite get my head around that.
Well, yeah, like, so last night I got one from this guy being like, you know, you're not funny, right? And then he was like, you should, and then he just sent a picture of his completely naked of him with his penis, being like, this is what you should be doing.
Right.
Okay.
That's so strange. I mean, maybe actually, I thought of one male comedian who might get dick pics. What about Tom Allen?
Maybe. I don't know if he gets dick pics. I don't know if he does. I'm not sure gay men do that to other gay men. I think it's just, I mean, obviously everyone sends dick pics, but I mean, I don't think they do like, because when I get dick pics, it's not usually from men who are like, hey, I just want to get to know you. They're usually trying to make you feel crap in some way or some sort of power. But, I mean, some of the photos are really silly. So, you know, it's just ridiculous.
Oh, I was about to ask if you considered just posting them immediately, but then that's probably definitely in violation of some Twitter rules. You can't post people naked. Probably for good reason. I mean, that's not to say that that's not a good rule for them to have.
Yeah.
Because you could just start outing the people. I mean,
you could make their penises public.
Like, yeah, exactly. Or yeah, I'm not sure Twitter would enjoy that. Maybe you can start like a website where female comedians like out men who send them dick pics.
Yeah. Good times. Yeah, so I think that's something that's peculiar to women. Also, I mean, another thing is it's getting so much better. But there is, you know, every female comic will tell you about the time when they were, you know, you go on a bill, you're put on a bill and you're the only female there. And equally, you're told you can't go on a bill because there's already a female comic on. So it's this kind of sort of putting them up as a niche category, which is ridiculous when we're 50% of the population. So that happens quite a bit. And then I've noticed, you know, when I go on to do sort of radio things, like some kind of comedy section about the news, they don't put me on with a man, they put me on with a woman. Because there's this idea of like, oh, well, you know, let's keep the women comedy together. So there's little things like that, which are a bit of a hindrance, but it's getting a lot better. And I think what's good is we're in a time where people are going, oh wow, women can be funny. So that and people want to prove that they see that women can be funny, so they're pushing women forward and they're saying, look, we think women are funny. Here's a funny woman, and I think you can take advantage of that as a woman and be like, yes, I'm getting on the funny woman train.
Do you think there is a difference in like the style or like the sense of humor? Like, I'm not saying that female comedy should be like a niche in itself, but do you think there is like some sort of niche to carve out as for like female comedy or women's comedy, or do you think it should just be contained within the whole? Because obviously there's lots of different like sub-genres of types of comedy. Like there'll be people who are doing like political stuff, there'll be people who are doing maybe like men sort of things. Do you know what I mean?
Lads.
Yeah, blokes comedy.
And I think that's a good point. I think another reason why sometimes women struggle in the industry is because a lot of TV comedy, and I don't mean sitcoms, but I mean sort of panel shows, is very much geared towards male humour. There's a kind of you know, with those shows like Mock the Weak and stuff, there is a sort of competitiveness of, you know, being the loudest, sort of out joking each other that women don't do so much. You know, I think women's humour is different and isn't quite so sort of aggressive. I'm trying to think of not using these gendered words, but like aggressively competitive. So I think it is there is definitely a sort of different streak to male humour, or there can be, and that's kind of backed up by a lot of the programmes that are made by men. And you know, to be fair, back in the day, kind of it was mainly men that you were seeing on screen anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's that bad to use like the gendered words, because that's kind of just more. Yeah, that's just a better word for describing the sort of style of humor on there. And like you said, it definitely, it's got something about the fact when you have, I don't know, like a bunch of guys on stage, like they'll be kind of constantly one up each other. But what would you say that like then the female style of comedy is? So if you're classifying, at least to some extent, that like male comedy is more, about this, at least on those panel shows, like it's competitive and sort of quick fire and always trying to one up each other. Like, how would you describe female comedy then?
Oh, I mean, I don't know. Even that makes me cringe. I mean, I guess it can be more sort of conversational rather than sort of banter. But there, you know, it also depends on the comic. I mean, Catherine Ryan is amazing at those sort of quick fire put downs. She's brilliant. And you know, there are comics that are just, you know, regardless of gender, are really good at that. I think sort of with society, I think women have got a bit more used to, just because of how we've been brought up, of sitting back and letting the men do the jokes. So women are a bit more like, hey, okay, no, look, I've got a joke, but don't worry, I don't need to listen to it. And I think it's a lot of female comics I know, they took longer to get to into the game of comedy. Like, you get male comics who started really young in their teens. Look, when I was coming up onto the circuits, a lot of the women who were starting were considerably older than the men that were starting. I think because it takes longer for women to go, oh no, wait, I can be funny. Actually, I'm really funny. And I think women are very good at being funny with each other. And sometimes in society, I do think it's a lot different now. But certainly in my teens and 20s, you weren't there to be funny. You know, you that wasn't kind of the perceived role. It was men were funny to impress women, and women laughed.
Hopefully. Not always.
Not always.
So where did your I don't even know what to describe it, like your like British woman character that you do online, like where did that come from?
Yeah, so she's a character. She's a character on the internet who, if anyone hasn't seen it, is a kind of pearl-clutching, very right-wing, Boris-loving, free speech commentator. And she sort of takes whatever topic is sort of talked about in the news, usually to do with the government, and offers her a great hot take on it. So she came about. It was in lockdown. I was bored, like most people, bored and frustrated. And it was during the Black Lives Matter protests. And I remember reading Sadiq Khan put up a post, and he was saying that it was after Edward Colston had been pulled down in Bristol, but Sadiq Khan said, okay, we're going to take down the statue of, I think it was Robert Milligan from London's Docklands. And he said, we're doing this because of his links to slavery. And the comments underneath his post were just really funny. It was a lot of really, really angry people saying, you're taking away our democracy, you're erasing history. And so I was reading these, and I was kind of a mix of finding it funny and also finding it quite infuriating. And I thought, what if I do a video of these comments, but I follow them through to their logical conclusion? So I put up this video of this woman who was saying, it's terrible them taking down these statues. They're erasing history, just like Stalin did, who incidentally I have a statue of in my garden. And not because I admire Stalin, but because I admire history and he looks good by the pond. So it was just this idea of taking this kind of rather like conservative logic and just following it through to what they said. So I put that up there, and I wasn't really, I thought, oh, this is a good idea, but I wasn't expecting it to go viral, which it kind of did. It just blew up. And then from there, it was I just did more and more videos of her. And she's great because she can talk about anything really. And she says awful things. So, which is good because I've always found awful things funny. So it's much easier to say that as a character than as yourself.
Or maybe these are your real views. And this is just
I am
way of
actually
there.
Extremely right wing. I mean, you say that I get abuse from people who, so a lot of people who think the videos are real, think it's real, but also from people on the left who get it's a joke, but are like, no, you've revealed your true colours and you're actually just a Tory pretending to be more of a Tory.
Oh, it's so amazing. Like sometimes like watching people's like purity tests like turn on them. Like the left, like just typically are really bad for this. It's always
God, they're
like
dreadful.
It's so funny. It's like
they're so. Do you know what? They're so much worse than the right, to be honest. Because the least with the right, the trolling I get from the right is very. It's just the same kind of thing. It's like, you're not funny. You're a loony lefty, and if you love refugees so much, why don't you live with them? That's kind of what they say. And they just sort of say that in various forms. And you're like, okay, I can go with that. But the left really go for the jugular, and they're just waiting to catch you out. So, I kind of I try and avoid, from bitter experience, tweeting about anything, any serious tweets. I'll tweet about serious issues a lot, but I'll tweet them sort of tongue in cheek. And then I once fired off a tweet, which was very bad, but very good learning curve, where I just sort of was cross about the situation I was reading online, and I sent off a serious tweet, and I got a lot of abuse from it from the left. And a lot of it was like, oh, we always knew you were a right-wing authoritarian Tory. And then, I still get, or people saying, but, and then these famous centrists, and they'll put my name in it. And I'm like, I'm not a centrist. I mean, I actually have no problem with centrists, but I'm not one. And you've decided I'm a centrist because it's like they can't compute that someone can just be left, but have a different view to them. It's very exhausting, and they really go for the jugular. I've had some really, some crazy insults from the left, where the right, you just know what you're getting. I think I'm like, it's fine, and I know I'm going to be abused. It's fine. But the left are like, you're an arrogant asshole, just like your character.
Oh my God, that's amazing! I love that they're going at like that. Although I find it's weird, actually, that this has changed, but I find that the right tend to have more of a sense of humour about themselves at times. And that
it's terrible, isn't it?
But that didn't used to be the way, because, like, if you think about it, like 10, 20 years ago, like, who would have been the people who were doing all the cancelling and that were, like, trying to shut things down for being, like, too offensive or shouldn't be on TV? It was all, like, the Christian conservative right. They were the ones that were, like, shutting everything down. They were, like, the mothers against South Park and like, it's like Family Guy shouldn't be on our TV, and, like, all of these shows, like, the people who would, like, write to Ofcom or whatever and be like, I can't believe they showed this, or someone said the F word on TV. And, like, this is the degradation of our society. And, like, that used to be the right, but now it's the left that, like, weirdly are the ones that, like, get mad about what people say. There's something really strange just, like, flipped at some point.
Yeah, and also, like, it's sort of holding... Adam Rowe made a really good point where he said we don't do with any other art form that suddenly in comedy it's kind of holding people up as a sort of paragon of virtue, and if you make a joke about something bad, of a bad subject, then you are somehow, you are evil and need to be abused. Whereas if you're doing a film about something bad and terrible, people don't go, oh, okay, hang on a minute. It's a bit mad. I mean, I know a lot of comics will go, and a lot of people will say, oh, there is no cancel culture. But I do think it is, it can sometimes as a comic, it is a bit scary because you can feel that people are quite censorious. And, I did one video that some people really took issue with, and it was actually quite scary. And I was out with my friend at the time, and I started getting this backlash on the internet. I said, oh God, I think I'm getting cancelled. And it's just not a nice feeling where you're like, oh God, I'll never work again. Because people are going to decide I'm evil because I've made a joke.
Oh. Yeah, that's such a weird thing. Like, as it is, it's just a joke. Like, that's all it is. And yeah, there's I find with the cancel culture thing, there's like the imagined how bad people are, and then there's the thing that's actually happening underneath it.
Yeah.
So there's people, like, things being cancelled or removed. There was like Peep Show episodes and like episodes of Benidorm, I remember, like, had got one or two of them had been removed. And I was just a bit like, oh, I don't like where this is going, where things aren't allowed to be made fun of. But then if you ask someone, like you say you ask, I don't know, like John from Swindon, who loves the Daily Mail, and he will be like, yeah, well, you can't say anything anymore. And it's like, it's not quite that bad, really, is it?
Yeah,
like you can still say a lot of things. But like the weird, like, element that's kind of been added to it is like what is acceptable on YouTube, for example, or on Twitter, like, is acceptable to say or even joke about. Because, like, I'm like, I've had a couple of like more controversial people on over the last, I don't know, couple of weeks, and all of the videos just been demonetized. And I'm like, this isn't quite censorship, but it's kind of like suggesting that I shouldn't talk about these things. And like, I'm so prepared for people to come at me at some point and try and cancel me, because I do like to talk to really controversial people. But I find they're the most entertaining or interesting.
It's difficult, isn't it? And I don't quite know what the answer is, because I think it's a real mix. It's one of these things that, depending on who I'm talking to, I can kind of quite easily be swayed either way. You know, I think there's a lot to be said for, you know, if you deplatform people, then you're not engaging with those views, and you're not showing up those views and showing up how bad they are, or just sort of debating them. But then also, in some cases, deplatforming, we've seen it can be really effective and work. So like with Katie Hopkins and Milo, oh God, how do you say his surname?
Yiannopoulos.
Yiannopoulos. Yeah, you know, he got deplatformed, and he was spreading real hate, and now where is he? I don't know. Like, so it can be good, but it's worth the conversation. I don't think it's simple enough for people to say, oh, there is no cancel culture, and there is no problem here. Could you go, well, there, you know, we need to sort of engage with this a bit more and look at what's going on, because it's tricky. And I get with people saying, I don't want to promote these views, and I think that's a really good point as well. Like, if you have someone, you know, go on who's really homophobic, you don't. Why do we want to listen to that? You don't want to debate whether someone should be homophobic or not. You know, we just shouldn't hear from them. So I just think it's a complicated issue, and you can't simplify it, really.
No, you really can. But I mean, quite often, like, one of the best ways to like display how stupid something is to be like, allow comedians to go up there and make fun of it, and to like play with ideas in the worst way. Like the Peep Show episode that I recall being deplatformed was because it was an episode where Jeremy has blackface on, and to me the point of the bit was the uncomfortableness of it. It's like showing that that's like not acceptable in society, because they're like suggesting that he's like a bad person for doing it. And like, when you see it, like, you can laugh, but there's also this really visceral, like, oh, okay, that's, you know, that's not what we do these days. And like, that is the point that they're making, that that when you show something like that, you're like almost reminding people and being able to like knock things down by the sheer act of making fun of them. Where when you take that away, it gives credence, and like, it gives like, legitimate arguments to the people who are like, oh, they're just canceling everything. Whereas I don't know, I'm just like very much in the camp of like, let people speak and be idiots, and that if you that you have to allow people to display their own stupidity, essentially.
Yes, I'm all for people displaying their own stupidity.
Oh yeah. So have you got any plans to take your English woman and like turn her into some sort of like on stage character, like Al Murray style?
I do. At the moment, they're quite vague plans. I'm trying to sort of work out how it would work. I've taken her live on stage sort of few times, and
really?
She's worked very well. And so I do like the idea of doing a show. I just want to work out how to do it, because I don't think it would work with just her ranting at everyone for an hour.
Okay.
You know, whether I do that with having like some sort of, you know, guests on, or, I mean, audience interaction was always something I really liked when I did straight stand-up. So, and she's really fun to interact with as a character. She's just so awful. So
you get to say all your real views. Yeah.
You get to say what's deep within my heart. Yeah. So yeah, hopefully we'll be doing that at some point. probably in 2022. And then I'm also hopefully I'm talking to a few people. Hopefully, she'll have some sort of podcast where she'll interview people, and it will be a kind of like talk radio type thing. So that would be really fun.
Oh my God, you're going to do a Julia Hartley Brewer parody?
Yes, that's exactly. I didn't want to say her name, but that's exactly. That's exactly what I pitched it as.
Oh my God, that could be incredible. Oh wow. Yeah, please do that. I want to see that. We need more like great comedy on the internet in the UK. Oh, that's good. Okay.
Yeah, she is my muse.
I really look forward to seeing that. That'll be great. Anyway, do you want to tell people where they can find you and your things and like plug anything before we finish up here?
Well, if they find me on Twitter or Instagram or both, on @Rosie is a Holt, HLT. @Rosie is a Holt. I don't know why I said that in such a weird way. So yeah, that would be the place to go, I'd say.
Okay, right. Well, yeah, Rosie, it's been a pleasure. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for making it all the way to the end of the podcast. Don't forget our sponsor, ExpressVPN, and my book, Brexit, The Establishment Civil War, can both be found in the links in the description below. And also, please like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. It's the best way to help us grow. Until next time, thanks for listening.
The animal dragged a child around its enclosure. The child had fallen into that enclosure. Officials are now defending their actions. ABC's Alex.
A few things I am not. I am not a cat. I am not an institutional investor. Nor am I a hedge fund.
There's no panic selling. These people, they may have bought at $4, sat through $400, went back to 40, went to 350, back down to 110, and they have not sold. All they've done is bought more. And there's no answer for that. There's no, it is like art of war mastery by a bunch of idiots who should know better. And they're just like, I'm not fucking leaving.
Fly me to the moon, let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars.
What's been happening on Reddit and in social media and in the marketplace has never been seen before.
To short 70, 60, 80% of a company, let alone 140%, I think a lot of people universally believe something is wrong there.
They're powerful. They want a stock higher. It's child's play. Why ever sell into the maw of Wall Street? Reddit bets. Why?
But everyone's wrong. It's like The Big Short again. Or more like The Big Short Squeeze this time, right?
So here we got the fox guarding the hen house, and one of the hens is complaining the fox is out to kill us, and the farmer says, I'm sorry, the fox is in charge of the hen house.
Whenever there is not billions, but like trillions of dollars involved in something, I argue that nothing is off the table.
The way they have absolutely cheated, stolen, robbed everyday people so all our hedge fund billionaire friends can get out and not get killed is one of the most remarkable, illegal, shocking robberies in the history, in plain sight.
Super Stonk and the other communities that have emerged are a hive mind, the likes of which we have never seen before. It's madness and brilliance, insanity and genius all rolled into one. It's very possible that Citadel will be gone in a few months. And not just Citadel, but the entire financial system has the potential to come crashing down. These crooks continue to gamble recklessly with the world economy, and this could be the moment that they finally get their justice.
You've got maybe 10 million people doing this who now own, probably more than 100 million shares. And eventually, they might own everything.